Well, thank you all for joining us. As I mentioned, we're going to be sitting and talking around the future of identity. So cookieless advertising. I'm very excited to be joined by two industry leaders in the space. Derek Nickel from SVP of Ad Technology at Paramount, and then Jay Goebel joining me back on the stage, VP of Data Partnerships at The Trade Desk. But before kicking things off, I would love for each of you to just give a quick intro and what you're kind of working on in your roles. And Derek, we'll start with you.
Sure. My name is Derek Nickel. Senior Vice President of Ad Technology, as the screen says. I've been in ad tech for 20-ish years. I kind of feel like I'm an OG at this point. But I was at the start of this when the cookie first came, and I'm sort of excited to see it now go away. That's how I spend my time.
Love that. Just thinking about cookies all day long. Yes. Jay?
Hi, everybody. Jay Goebel, Vice President of Data Partnerships at The Trade Desk. And what that means at our company is that I have responsibility for data that comes into our platform. So I work with partners like Amplify and other CDPs and clean rooms and data warehouses to facilitate that transition of data onto our platform. And then I also work with the providers of third-party data who monetize that data on our platform, or their data on our platform. So I work with LiveRamp and Oracle and IOTA and a bunch of different branded providers who bring their data to sell it through the Trade Desk. I also work with our identity providers. We license identity graphs from some of the biggest names and combine them into our product, Identity Alliance. And it's a really interesting seat to sit in because you can see what's going on in the first-party world, and you can think about the third-party world and the ways that those things can get brought together to really power effective advertising. So I'm really, really happy to be able to do what I do and partner with you all.
Well, obviously, we're really excited to have you both joining us today. I think that, Derek, you talked around cookies. You were around since you started when the cookie got started. And now that Google has yet again announced that they're pushing it back, right? I think when you think of digital identity, a lot of the focus is on the cookie, but it extends to a lot more than that. Derek, we'd love to start with you again. Like as a publisher, connected TV provider, like how do you think about the advertising and digital identity space and like the way that it's evolving and how you all think about it at Paramount?
Yeah, I mean, for us being a streaming first company, cookies aren't. We've been forced to live in a cookieless world pretty much this whole time, right? So it's not new to us, and our DNA is very deeply rooted in web publishing in general, right? So we've seen a lot of these versions of identity or identity products or identity solutions. Fast forward, what I see emerging is this, this going back to sort of this permission-based marketing, right? Having a relationship with the consumer, right? A dialogue with the consumer about what the value exchange is, and in return with that, right, comes this asset, right, that now we can, bring to life inside of programmatic and direct advertising, right, and help facilitate, this exchange of buying, but also just, having something that people can gravitate towards and trust. I think you worry less about things like fraud and what you're buying when you know that a publisher like us is focusing really hard on having a consumer relationship with somebody, so you can trust that inventory and you can expect outcomes from it.
And Jay, like obviously he's thinking about that from publisher, but you're helping the buying platforms. You're helping buyers make those connections to the sell side. Like how are you thinking about that? The identity space for both. Clients that are utilizing the Trade Desk to make buys, but also that that data marketplace that you're kind of talking through.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I talked this morning about what a UID2 is, and I mentioned that our marketplace is heavily invested in UID2. Nearly all of our providers are sending their data in against that identifier, and then with great connections like the one we have in place, we can facilitate that transaction on first-party data. You used the word emerging, and I'd like to pick at that a little bit because the notion of an authenticated identifier like a UID2 is not emerging. It's here. It's the future is now, and we are operating on that full bore. And it's really interesting the seat that we sit in at the Trade Desk because of the job that we do for our advertisers. As a DSP, our primary role is to look at as much of the internet as we can possibly see and make decisions about those things and whether we want to buy them or not or place a bid on them for any one of our advertisers that we're trying to support. And this number I heard the other day, and it just kind of blows my mind. We consider every single second of every single day, we consider 15 million bid opportunities. So 15 million, 15 million, 15 million. We're having to decide if we want to bid on one of those things every single second, 15 million of them. And so when we, again, the job that we do is make a decision on that ID, and we bid on a portion of those, and we only win a small fraction of what we bid on. The really interesting thing, back to this idea that UID2 and authenticated identifiers are not actually emerging, they're here and now. When we look at those 15 million bid opportunities, there's only very few of them that have only a cookie associated with them. We see a lot of identifiers combined in many bid opportunities, and we're seeing more and more UID2 within that bid stream data as well. And our buying has shifted in that direction. Our CEO talked last week on our earnings call about the percentage of spend that we have in specific channels, and about 40% of our spend is in video, which is inclusive of CTV. And that's a heavy UID2 environment. We're seeing great adoption and growth within streaming audio. And so, again, we are living in the future today. And you know what? We'll continue buying on cookies while they're there, but if they go, we're prepared. Advertisers should feel comfortable that there's an alternative out there, and it's going to be more effective.
And like you talked about, like obviously it's something that's being used for a while. And I know, Derek, at Paramount, I believe you all adopted UID2 or one of the early ones in early 2023, right? And have been obviously working with the trade desk closely on that front, on the inventory side. Can you talk a little bit around like how that approach, how that authenticated identifier has been utilized within your ecosystem, and what are some of the benefits and successes that you've seen as being a streaming provider?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is just the impact of the company's revenue. I mean, we've seen since we've launched a year ago, we've seen that the opportunity that's brought us at scale. We're putting on a monthly basis tens of billions of impressions out there to be bid on, and we see that part of the business only growing, which is great. That was the plan. I think fast forward. Now that we're enriching all the bid requests, I see the opportunity is going into the measurement use cases, attribution, right? Being something more than just a biddable identifier, but something that's now being leveraged to measure and show that outcomes are happening. And doing that not only in a digital, from a digital standpoint, but also now doing that in the linear side, right? So essentially digitizing linear, right, and bringing that targetability and measurability, right, to our entire portfolio.
And I think it was at the upfronts last week that Paramount was talking a lot around that idea that these different channels that maybe have historically been viewed as upper funnel or awareness, and not to say that they don't serve that purpose, but they can still be viewed as a performance channel. Jay, like you talk about all the data partnerships. Can you talk about how you all are working and saying the data providers across the board making these connections, that it can help make more inventory sources performance driven? And then Derek, would love to have you continue that as well, like given how much you guys at Paramount are focused on making that a performance-based ecosystem as well. But start with you.
Yeah, so we again talked at the beginning about UID2, what it is and what it enables for us. And with the breadth of data that we have on our platform, whether that's first-party data that has been highly segmented for specific purposes and areas within the funnel, or third-party data that can do much the very same thing, it can be applied in this environment that we're talking about because it's tied to a UID2. One of the areas that we're really excited about together is retail data and what it can do for CTV. And so retail is wonderful because it is 100% verified and observed. A lot of the data that I manage on the platform starts with the seed of something and then gets modeled out and goes to, it's basically a propensity model that somebody might do something. But with retail data, you have this observable truth that you're turning into a segment for targeting. You go into a grocery store and you buy Tide, and that's tied to your loyalty card, tied to your UID2, and the retailer can make a segment of Tide buyers, and that can live on our platform, and that can be used for lower funnel campaigns from P&G. But that segment, that buying behavior can also be built to fulfill persona type audiences. So think about a consumer who goes into a grocery store and buys for the very first time diapers and baby wipes and formula. And the retailer can see that they hadn't bought that stuff 3 weeks previously. That's obviously a new parent's audience. And GM would probably be really interested in using that audience to try to sell that family a oversized SUV. Full disclosure, I have twins. When my wife found out she was pregnant, we ran right out and bought a minivan. So that stuff does work, right? If GM had hit me up, I probably would have bought an oversized SUV. So the data is granular. The data is highly targetable in places like Paramount. It's tied to an identifier that can be brought back to a conversion. You can target granularly and specifically, and you can measure back to drive that performance.
And so you talked about the retail, possibilities and partnerships, and Derek, like you've had different partnerships that you've kind of started to work on over the last couple of years, like with IQ. Can you talk a little bit around how you guys think about that from the partnerships perspective, whether it's with Walmart or other kind of potential retail ecosystems you see there?
Yeah, well, it feels like forever ago. When our companies first came together and we started to craft a plan of what we were going to invest in, the most like. The opportunity was to really consolidate down into a single ad stack. So by achieving that, it unlocked a lot of capabilities for us, because now that we're not in multiple ad servers, we're not in multiple data stacks, right? We can operate as one Paramount or IQ. That then allows us to take on things like identity, right, and start to figure out how are we going to weave identity into the fabric of that, right? Because historically, ad tech was built on the back of somebody else's identity, right? It was commoditized, right? And what we have now is we have the opportunity to build, very valuable identity asset, right? That we can focus on with partnerships, like with the Trade Desk and others, right? And like bring it to the table, right? All this investment that we're doing, everything that we're doing in order to like drive our consumer businesses and our fast streaming businesses, we can bring that asset to the table. And what I'm like super excited about, like in this retail conversation, is, the things used to move really slow, and I feel like there was a lot of demonstrations today with how data doesn't need to move anymore, and it becomes actionable right away. And this whole this promise of like real time targeting, I actually think it could be real time. I think we get to a world where a retailer is essentially making a sale, right, and understanding and putting that person in the next audience and already targeting them without having to have humans in the way, right? AI can help drive some of those patterns. So, a lot of what I've seen in the investment that Amperity has made and Databricks here and others like Snowflake, right, with a zero copy is, I think it's going to really change or transform our business as we move forward.
And I think, as obviously we talk a lot within the Amperity ecosystem about helping brands kind of unify their data so they can think about this in the audience and the targeting. But Derek, that's a really interesting point in the concept of when you can bring both of those two things together and actually start to have that move at speed of not just the way that media can be bought and sold, but the way that customers and consumers are either consuming the media or going and making the transactions off of the ads or the influences that they've seen across the board, it can really start to actually pick up. And I think that's where we see an opportunity with the future of identity in this space, when you're not thinking about just a single channel, which is what cookies were. Cookies were display, and then it was mobile ad IDs were just in that space. When you can bridge across that, both within the ecosystems, within the four walls, but also within the buying ecosystems, it allows people to move pretty quickly, which is exciting. And I think that as a kind of Trade Desk as a data marketplace, right? You're kind of in the middle of those bridges of helping to make the retailer side or the supply side kind of help those interactions. As you're kind of looking to the future, what do you want to see from more of to make this more of reality? What are you looking to have happen to say hey, this is going to be what the future looks like, and this is going to be what Trade Desk role is in that side?
Yeah, I mean, we're just continuing to invest as heavily as we can in making CTV work as effectively as it possibly can. Continues to be a primary focus of the business. We've built a buying platform that works really, really well in CTV. I talked this morning about the notion of seed data to help make better decisions about what we prioritize, both from an inventory space and an algorithmic buying space. And all of that can be applied to CTV in the way that it is to all the other digital channels. And so, we're just really excited about the opportunity that we get to play a role in this, because we think that this format is the type of advertising that, or the type of media that can be the most effective for advertisers. Just the lean-in factor of the content that's produced on platforms like yours, and the limited ad load, and the fact that there is a smaller amount of content available for advertising. You have to make that work really, really well. And again, we're thrilled to be able to sit in the spot to be able to help make those decisions to drive the best performance.
And so, like when we have conversations, like a lot of times when we're talking about being able to activate first-party data, I think a lot of marketers will think, oh, I will think programmatically, or I'm going to think my social media walled gardens, right? For brands that have not maybe explored new inventory types, or and Derek, like they have maybe not thought about connected TV because they think linear is for bigger brands. Like, how do you talk to those types of advertisers who are this is newer to the space, and like how should they be thinking about it? How should they be like approaching this in relation to not just understanding how to bring their media dollars to this new inventory type, but that it can help drive performance? Like, what are some of those conversations for you, Derek?
I think it starts with, what type of advertiser are we dealing with, right? Because I don't think you go from like not being performance marketer to being a performance marketer overnight. Right. There are steps there. For us, we have Paramount Ad Manager, which is a self-service platform, right? Which for $500 you can go in there and you can build a creative with AI and get off and running and be on our platform. You can bring measurement to that conversation, right? So if you're just starting and you want to be able to test, and you want to be able to test partners, it's a really easy and effective way to do that. A big push for us this year is always on attribution. We want to bring measurement to all of our clients, and we announced a number of partnerships, over these last couple of weeks, and there'll be more. And we're making a big bet on data. Right, like a really big bet. Like we want all of our customers to have like performance information of how well the money they're spending on Paramount, no matter how small, right? From the $500 advertisers to the $5 million advertisers, we want all of them to be able to tell that story. Whether they want to bring it themselves or not, we're going to help them get there.
And Jay, like, from your perspective, right? Like, you guys talk a lot around streaming audio, streaming. Like, how do you have those conversations with advertisers as they're evaluating kind of new inventory types in your ecosystem?
How do we use data to get them to think about different channels? Yeah. Interestingly, a lot of advertisers that come to our platform are thinking about multiple channels already. They may set up a campaign for display, but then interestingly, they set up distinct campaigns for mobile and digital out of home, and then maybe CTV as well. And they're not thinking about it in an omni-channel way. So that's a big objective for our sales organization, is to get them to think about consolidating into one place. In many occasions, despite the fact that they're setting them up individually, they're still picking the same target, they're thinking about the same objective, they have similar creative. And so it doesn't seem like rocket science to say to put it together, but they just aren't thinking that way right now. So we're asking them to consider that. And the piece of data that we use most often to help influence that discussion is to say, think about what we can offer you across all of these buying channels on a common identifier, especially with the application of a graph to help make connections where that commonality might not exist. And what we deliver then is a great opportunity for reach and frequency management. So with the application of that graph, we can see, hey, we just exposed UID2 123 on Paramount, and we just exposed cookie 4 on ESPN. That's the same person. We're managing that for you. And so when they understand the benefit that we can bring with reach and frequency management, it's a pretty easy sell. I will say that despite that explanation, we are seeing, as you said, like, you don't become a performance marketer overnight. There still is some reluctance to really grab hold of CTV as a highly targetable environment. A lot of people are still thinking about making CTV buys the old way they did it, with demographic-based targeting. And so for anyone in the room who's thinking about running...
So I know we all, tentatively agreed backstage that we can come back here in a year with a bottle of blends and have another panel conversation around something like this, right? So we're all agreed on that. But over the next 12 months, right? You guys are in the weeds. You guys are talking to customers. Like, what do you all see as being like the kind of the big things that will start to shift over the next 12 months? And again, I don't think the Google decisions really impact stuff a whole lot. I think we're moving past that. I'll start with you, Jay. Like, what do you think are going to be the kind of like the trends and the interesting shifts in the next year?
Yeah, I think it's just a follow-on to what I just got done saying, which is omni-channel campaigns, very granular targeting strategies, moving more dollars into CTV. It really is the best environment. It's premium content. Like I said before, it's lean in as opposed to lean back when you're scrolling through social platforms and things like that. So it's a high opportunity to really drive engagement with your prime audience, and we can target it highly, and we can measure it effectively.
Derek, what do you see as being the areas that you'll focus on and really start to see the shift start to happen within your ecosystem and with the customers and partners you work with?
I mean, I would say to start, the scale is already there. So if you're concerned that there's no scale in CTV, it's here. And I feel like for our business, you can go and review our numbers that we release every quarter. We have had nothing but growth over the last 6 years, and I don't see that stopping. We're going to continue to make great content. People are going to want to watch it. People are going to want to tune into live sports. People are going to want to watch award shows. I think we find more people are now, whether you're a cord cutter, I just think you want to be able to watch content and you want to be able to get really great content. It's not necessarily about like cutting the cable off your house anymore. I think managing that growth is a fun engineering problem. When you start to deal at these volumes of transactions and enriching bid requests with identity signal, there's some fun engineering opportunities there, and I think we're making all the right investments now to be ready for it in the future.
Well, I want to again thank you both for joining us here today, and obviously talking around it is a very big and broad topic that can mean many different things depending on the ways you're going through it. But appreciated both of your perspectives, and obviously being able to hear from you and have the crowd listen as well was beneficial. So thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.